What's up everybody, hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week's video is brought to you by our channel sponsors International MTG on TCG Player, as well as Martin from the Hobby Horse. I'd also like to shout out Mythic Tools, the official live counter app of the channel. This is by far the best live counter app available for tracking all your commander games and stats either by yourself or with your favorite playgroup. Available on both iOS and Android. On this week's episode of Not Your Average Meta, I'd like to welcome everyone back for the first game of our long-awaited 6th season. This week's matchup features Patrick searching for that elusive first channel win with his Locust God deck, Ryan playing his Oops All Universe Beyond deck using SpongeBob SquarePants as his commander, Fallgirl playing his +1/+1 counters all toughness Rasaad and Bashir Master Chef background deck, and Foil playing his Coram the Undertaker Power in the Graveyard Matters deck. Now that we have our fighters, let's step into the Thunderdome once again and see which deck will come out on top. Foil plays a tapped Zeotaurus Proving Ground, while Patrick plays a Mountain, paying 1 for the first turn 1 Sol Ring of the season. Ryan plays a tapped Jetmir's Garden, while Fog plays an Evolving Wilds for turn before cracking it, going to get a Plains while he passes turn to Foil, who plays a Mountain. Foil then pays 2 for a Rakdos Signet before passing to Patrick, who plays an Island. Ryan plays a Verdant Catacombs for turn, paying 1 life to go into his library and get a Forest card, while Fog plays a Forest of his own before paying 2 for a Mind Stone. Foil plays a tapped Raucous Theater for turn, which has him surveilling 1 card, keeping it on top of his library. Patrick plays a second Island for turn before tapping out in order to cast Kyranos, God of Storms. Ryan plays a Plains for turn before paying 3 for Kadama's Reach in order to go get 2 basic lands, 1 to put in a play and 1 for his hand. Fog plays another Plains for turn before paying 3 and casting Taya, the Shield Mage. He then downticks Taya in order to create a 0/3 white wall. Foil plays a Wooded Foothills for turn before paying 4 in order to cast his commander, Coram the Undertaker. He then pays 1 life in order to crack the Foothills and passes his turn to Patrick. Patrick reveals the first draw of his turn, which happens to be a land, so he draws an additional card. He then plays a Mountain for turn and then taps out in order to cast his commander, the Locust God. Ryan plays a Swamp for turn, which then has him tapping out in order to cast his commander, SpongeBob SquarePants. Fog plays another Force for turn and then pays 3 to also cast his commander, Rasaad and Bashir. He then also casts an Aegis Automaton and passes to Foil, who draws for turn. Foil then goes straight to combat, swinging his commander over Patrick, which has everybody milling a card into their graveyard. Patrick then decides not to block and takes the 4 commander damage. Foil then plays Ryan's Plains for turn as well as Patrick's Lotus Petal. He then pays to cast a Splinter Fright as well as a Birds of Paradise. Patrick reveals his first draw for turn, which has him bolting the Splinter Fright, before he then creates an Insect token and casts Niv Mizzet the Firemind. Patrick then plays an Island for turn before going to combat, swinging his Insect over at Fog for 1 damage. Ryan draws for turn and then pays 4 to cast Deadpool, which then has him legendary cascading into Frodo's Sorin's Bane. Deadpool then enters and has him exchanging text boxes with Foil's commander. Ryan then also casts a Toe-Tech Spear before passing to Fog, who plays a Lano Reborn for turn, which comes into play with a 1/1 counter. Fog then casts an Underseller Sweep, which has him gaining the initiative and going into the Undercity. He then goes into his library to get a basic land to put into his hand. Foil draws and loses 3 life before he then pays in order to cast a Damnation. This then destroys all the creatures in play before he uses Patrick's Lotus Petal to help him cast an Animate Dead. He then brings the Splinter Fright in his graveyard back into play and passes his turn to Patrick, who reveals the first draw of his turn, which has him bolting the Splinter Fright. Patrick then plays another Island for turn before paying to recast his commander, the Locust God. Ryan plays another Plains for turn before paying 2 to cast Senu, Keen Eye Protector. He then also pays 4 to cast the One Ring before he taps it, drawing a card. On his upkeep, Fog goes into the second part of the Undercity, which has him scrying 2 cards, choosing to keep both of them on top. He then plays a Nesting Grounds as his land for turn before he pays 2 to cast a Giant Ox, grafting the 1/1 counter from his land onto it. Fog then downticks Taya once again, creating another wall, before he pays 3 in order to cast a Dulgalvian Pack Beast. Foil draws for turn and then pays to cast his commander a second time before passing his turn to Patrick. Patrick then reveals his first draw for turn, which has him bolting Ryan's Bird. He then casts the just revealed Psychosis Crawler before he remembers to create an Insect token. Patrick then goes to combat, swinging his Insect over at Fog's 1 Planeswalker, sending him to the graveyard. On his upkeep, Ryan loses 1 life before he then draws for turn and plays a tapped Path of Ancestry. He then pays to cast Basim Ibon Ishik before tapping his Soul Ring in order to draw 2 more cards. Ryan then also pays 1 to cast Plankton before paying in order to equip him with the Totec Spear. On his end step, Fog pays 1 in order to crack his Mind Stone and draw a card. On his upkeep, Fog then goes into the third part of the Undercity, which has him goading Patrick's commander. He then plays another Plains for turn, before he then pays in order to cast his background, Master Chef, as well as paying 4 more to cast the Long Shot Squad. Foil draws for turn and then goes straight to combat, this time swinging his commander over at Fog. This then has each player milling a card into their graveyards. Fog then blocks the commander damage with his Ox, before Foil then plays an Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, which he then follows up by casting a Necroglyph. Patrick discards on his upkeep, but then reveals the first card he drew for turn, which then has him bolting one of Ryan's creatures. He then creates another insect token before paying 4 for a Primal Amulet. He then goes to combat, swinging his goaded commander over at Foil, who takes the commander damage, and his 2 insects over at Fog, who blocks with 2 of his creatures. On his upkeep, Ryan loses 2 life before he then discards and draws for turn, before he then plays a Rockfall Veil. He then taps the One Ring to draw 3 cards before paying 7 to cast Gary the Snail. This then immediately gets countered by Patrick with a Dissolve, which has him adding a counter to his amulet and scrying a card to the bottom of his library. On his upkeep, Fog discards before going into the next part of his Undercity, which has him drawing a card before he then draws for turn. He then pays to cast his commander a second time before he then goes to combat. Fog then attacks with his Pack Beast and his Ox, which has him mobilizing 3 warrior tokens, which come into play with 1/1 counters on them. This then also has him creating 2 soldier tokens off his enchantment, which also enter with 1/1 counters on them. This then has his 3 warriors going at Patrick, while his Ox and his soldier go over at Ryan, and his Pack Beast and his soldier go at Foil. Patrick then blocks one of the warrior tokens, while Ryan blocks the giant Ox coming at him before everybody takes the rest of the damage. Fog's warriors then disappear on his end step, and Foil discards a Lord of Extinction into his graveyard. Foil then draws for turn and plays a Scolding Tarn before paying 5 to cast a Burning Anger targeting his commander. He then pays the 1 life in order to crack a Scolding Tarn to go get a land, and in response, Fog decides to try to be the hero and tries to destroy the Burning Anger with a Disenchant. And as expected, in retaliation, Foil taps his commander in order to deal 31 damage to Fog's face. The Burning Anger then gets destroyed, and Foil finishes getting his land from his library. Patrick reveals his first draw for turn, which happens to be a land, so he draws an additional card and deals 2 damage to each of his opponents. This then has him creating 2 more insect tokens before he plays an island as his land for turn. He then casts a Goblin Electromancer, and in the greatest anime betrayal of all time, he casts a Silver Scrutiny where X is equal to 7, which has him drawing 7 cards, and dealing 7 damage to each of his opponents, killing Fog after his great sacrifice he made for the table. He then creates 7 more insect tokens before he gets the initiative from Fog and goes into his library to get a land to put into his hand. Patrick then goes to combat, swinging his 11 insects over at Foil, taking him down to 7 life. On his upkeep, Ryan loses 3 life and draws for turn before remembering he needed a discard. He then taps the One Ring to draw 4 more cards before he then plays a tapped Indatha Triome. He then pays 7 in order to recast his commander a second time before passing his turn to Foil. Foil discards a card on his upkeep before he then draws for turn. He then plays the mountain that he drew as his land for turn before going to combat, swinging both of his creatures over to Patrick. This then has each player milling a card into their graveyard before Patrick decides to just block his commander. But before damage is dealt, Foil pays to cast a Boros Charm from Ryan's graveyard, giving his other creature double strike, taking Patrick down to 10 life. Patrick then discards on his upkeep before revealing the top card of his library, which is a land, which has him drawing an additional card and dealing 2 damage to each of his opponents. He then creates 2 more insects and plays a mountain as his land for turn. He then pays to cast a Precognitive Perception, which has him drawing 3 cards, creating 3 insects, and dealing 3 damage to each of his opponents. He then casts a Windfall, which has each player discarding their hand and drawing 8 cards while each of his opponents take 8 damage. This then takes Foil out of the game and gives Patrick enough hasty insects to also take out Ryan, so Ryan decides to scoop the game up to Patrick. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe in order to see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.